Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you tonight about vulnerable road users, defining who vulnerable road user groups are and how you can protect yourself as a vulnerable road user, because at one time or another, we're all going to be vulnerable road users, pedestrians, riders on motorcycles, cyclists, and people on scooters, mobility scooters, mostly senior citizens and other people who have mobility challenges and those types of things. Those are what we're going to be talking about tonight. So questions and answers live stream. This is Smart Sunday number 13, and we certainly appreciate all the smart drivers that show up and talk to us and ask questions and are successful in passing a road test. And congratulations to all of the people in the last week who have passed a road test and done all of the work that they need to do in order to be successful in that endeavor. As well, if you are endeavoring to pass a road test, have a look at the playlist Pass a Road Test Smart. The other thing that I did this week that you may or may not be aware, that there are playlists on different YouTube channels if people are up on what they're doing. And I've divided a lot of the videos into playlists. So certainly have a look around at the playlists here on the channel, because one of the things I've done this week is I've divided the turning videos on how to turn right and how to turn left into two separate playlists. So I have a how to turn right and how to turn left playlist. And as well, the other thing that I'm going to do is start organizing the videos into observation and communication. I also had a seeing and observing playlist that I generated for you as well. So for anybody who's going for a road test soon and coming up soon, those will help you as well. So for those of you watching the live feed on the playback, make sure you have a look around for those playlists. And the other endeavor that I've started this week as well is Crash Analysis Smart. So what I've done is I've been watching YouTube videos with my mate Tim, who has a channel on basic Joomla tutorials. For those of you who don't know, Joomla is the competitor to WordPress. And Tim and I both use Joomla for our websites. It's a content management system. And if you need a website, by all means, look Tim up at basic Joomla tutorials, and he'll be able to help you out with web service and helping design your website. And he is very much about designing websites that you can build yourself and do content and those sorts of things. So Crash Analysis Smart, Tim and I were working on that, and I actually got some of that up. So got that going this week and did the first one on left-hand turns. It seemed to be a theory this week or a theme this week rather, on doing left-hand turns and talk to you about left-hand turns and how to stay safe and how to do that for the purposes of a road test, and what to do if you get caught in the intersection on the yellow light and the light goes yellow and then to red. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So Andrew's here. Hi, Andrew. Received my G last Wednesday. Thanks for everything. You are most welcome, Andrew, and that is great news that you passed. Bernice. Didn't start driving till 55. And how is that going, Bernice, that you had your license but you didn't drive? How is that going for you? Are you having any challenges with your driving and that sort of thing? Just let us know there, and we can talk about that. Maybe we can help you out as well. So yeah, so we've had a few people here, and so yeah, we've had some good success, and I do apologize if I'm tardy on getting to the comments. I've been trying to get up on that. It's, as the YouTube channel builds and is more and more successful, there tends to be a bit more work, so it's really great. I did not pass my test as I was watching inbuilt cameras that looked too much turning. Yes, Azar, you cannot use cameras for the purposes of a road test. You need to know that. And yeah, I wish you had asked me that before. And maybe what I need to do is I need to do a whole video on that you can't use cameras in the vehicle for the purposes of your road test. They really want to know that you can drive a vehicle that doesn't have cameras or other technological aids in it. You can drive a vehicle and still observe and scan and do the things you need to do to be safe for the purposes of a road test. And in terms of looking on a road test, what was I going to say? Built-in cameras, technology. Yes, but the thing I was going to say is that the reason for that is because they believe that you're not always going to be watching or driving the same vehicle. So if you get into a different vehicle, you're going to need to be able to do that be able to observe and scan and those types of things without technological aids, and that's the reason that they don't allow you to do that as of yet with a vehicle. But you know, self-driving cars are coming in the coming decades, so they're thinking that that's going to happen as well. Katie's here. I'm a bit confused about speed limits. So if I'm adhering to the speed limit on my test, but that's below the flow of traffic, is that a ding? What's the best thing to do? Okay, Katie, so for purposes of speed on a road test, you have to do the speed limit or the flow of traffic, whichever is less. So if you're doing the speed limit and it's less than the flow of traffic, then that's fine. But just make sure if you're on a multi-lane road, that you stay over to the outside lane. That's the slow lane, and the other lanes are for passing. So, yeah, but that's okay. So I'm adhering to, and no, you do not want to, Katie, you do not want to keep up with the flow of traffic if it's going above the posted speed limit. For the purposes of your road test, you have to have a look. You have to adhere to the posted speed limit, okay? So make sure you do that. It's the posted speed limit or the flow of traffic, whichever is less, okay? So Corey, Bricks for Wheels is here. Just finished my email. Thanks, Corey. I'll have a look at that after I do the live feed tonight. And a few other odds and ends I got to do as well. Jamal, thank you so much. My problem is left turns. And what is it, Jamal, that you're having problems with in terms of left turn? Is it where to position the vehicle? Is it pulling out and turning? Is it judging gap? Is it how fast you're going on the turn? What specifically are you having difficulty with in terms of left turns for the purposes of preparing? Are you preparing, Jamal, for your road test, or do you already have your license? Just let me know that, and then I'll be able to answer that for you. So crash analysis. So yeah, this week we were talking about left turns. I did a video. I had a comment from someone who had some difficulty. Okay, so Jamal said he's having trouble with speed there. So I'll just talk about that, and then I'll come back to the crash analysis stuff. Jamal, on a left-hand turn, you want to be doing somewhere between 15 kilometers an hour and 30 kilometers an hour, or sort of 18 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour, depending on how big the intersection is. So when you come up to the intersection for your left-hand turn, you want to put the front steer tires on the front crosswalk line. And the reason that I advocate that, and I've had discussion about this with other drivers in the past, is that you're committed to the intersection, but you're not in the intersection if something goes wrong. And we've seen this week, in terms of the information that I presented on left-hand turns, that left-hand turns are the highest risk maneuver for new drivers. And they're somewhat daunting for, I would say, veteran drivers as well. So if you're not in the intersection, if something goes wrong, you're probably going to stay out of trouble. So that's the reason. The other school of thinking in terms of where you position your vehicle and when you're waiting to make a left-hand turn is to move into the intersection and try and get as many vehicles through the intersection as possible. I don't find that pans out as well, and I always stay with the front steer tires and the front crosswalk line, so it works out. You wait for the gap, you judge your gap, and then when you can go, and if it's a busy intersection, you're going to have to wait for the advanced green. Or you're going to have to go on the yellow. So you're going to need to know that. So you're going to need to make sure that the other traffic, the gap is sufficient, or the vehicles are coming to a stop before you go. And if it's a left-hand turn and it's a multi-lane road onto which you're turning, you're going to have to turn into the left-hand lane and then immediately move over to the right-hand lane. So signal, mirror, shoulder check, and move over to the right-hand lane. As well, if there are vehicles turning right from a slip lane or whatnot, and what I would suggest you do is look at the turning right at complex intersection. I'll explain this about don't pull in beside another vehicle. Don't turn in beside another vehicle. Turn into the spaces between the vehicles that are turning right. So that's what you want to do to be safe. And again, as I said, Jamal, your speed, 15 to 30 kilometers an hour, or 12 to 20, 25 miles an hour, depending on how big the intersection is, and get that speed before you actually go into the corner. Isoblisk, doing a live feed, talking to people about driving and talking about crashes and those types of things. Okay. So Corey, there you go. There's the video for Katie on speed limits. That's really great. Thanks. Wilson is here. The drive right haven't contacted me. I really want to pass my road test sooner or later. I have to wait almost 2 weeks. Wilson, have you contacted them to see what the delay is in terms of getting in and getting booked? Have they said anything to you? My pleasure, Jamal. I'm glad I could help out. Sam, I have my road test in 6 days and I have about 45 hours of driving time. What can I do in the next couple of days to fine tune everything and ease my anxiety? Sam, have you done any work with the fundamentals of driving? So, for example, going back and revisiting the fundamentals and working with some of those 36-inch, 1 meter tall pylons and the fundamentals of driving. Excuse me, because I find that sometimes after you've done a bit of driving and gotten used to that sort of thing, if you go back and work with some of those pylons and you do some of the reverse backing up and backing or 2-point reverse turn, reviewing some of the parallel parking and doing the forward and reverse figure eights, sometimes that'll help with reducing your fear, and it'll help you to also better understand the spatial relationship of the vehicle in space and place. So sometimes that's what I do is with students when I'm working with them and teaching them how to drive, is after they've had some experience in driving, revisit the fundamentals, and that will help you out to just understand some of the stuff and to clarify some of the stuff that maybe the first time around you didn't get all of the details and that whatnot. So yeah, I might suggest you go and do that as well. And then just, you know, take a catalog or sit down on a piece of paper and think of the weaknesses and those types of things. And the last thing, Sam, I would ask you is, have you booked in for a mock road test yet? Just answer those questions and I'll let you know. Wilson. Okay, but Wilson, if they haven't contacted you yet in terms of booking the road test, then you need to contact them and say, hey, just sort of, you know, what's going on. So, okay, definitely be assertive and get, you know, because you gotta get out there and really sort of, you know, make sure that you do what you need to do in order to get you booked in. Okay, Karen. I'm going for my CDL in a couple of weeks, and I'm working on my pre-trip. There are lots of parts that I'm not familiar with. I can't remember everything. Any pointers? Okay, Karen, when you're doing your pre-trip inspection, make sure you have a sequence and break the vehicle up into sections. Which one are you doing? Are you doing tractor trailer or are you doing a straight truck, Karen? Because it doesn't really matter which one, but you want to, you know, break it up left side under the hood, right side under the hood, front of the truck, top to bottom. So make sure that you move top to bottom, left to right, and then you break the vehicle up into sections. When you break it up into sections, that's going to help you to remember the information that you need for the purposes of doing your pre-trip inspection. As well, the in-cab is probably the hardest part. So make sure you have a sequence as well. Come up for your own sequence for that. And that will help you to remember the information that you need to do. Now, are you having difficulty, Karen, with the pre-trip inspection for the air brakes? Is that one of the other things that you're having difficulty with? Just leave a comment down there and I'll be sure to answer that for you. Sam, you're most welcome. Andrew, is going straight but traffic is packed and you become stuck in the middle of the intersection at red light. Is it wise to attempt to change lanes, reverse, or turn left to avoid being stuck? No, Andrew, if you're stuck in the intersection and it's a red light, know that you own the intersection. And have a look at the video that I put up today about charging the yellow light. There's a section in there on the vehicle. The pickup truck is going through the intersection, making a left-hand turn. The tractor trailer comes through the intersection, and that pickup truck actually turns on the red light. So know that you own the intersection. Do not back up. Don't attempt to change lanes because all of that's unpredictable actions. The other traffic knows that you're sitting in the intersection. So just relax, take a breath. I know it's daunting that you're in the intersection and the light's red and you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You're not going to die. Okay. The other vehicles at the intersection can see you and they know that they're going to wait for you. Okay. So just take a breath and go. Okay. When the gap is clear, go. And that's the most important thing, because you are much safer sitting in the intersection and other traffic going around you and weaving and those types of things than it is for you to go when the gap isn't sufficient. So know that. All right. So Karen, you're driving tractor trailer. Yeah. So break it up into sections. So the truck, now I can't get too technical because I know, Karen, that other driving schools and driving instructors have a kind of a different sequence for doing the truck and whatnot, but break it up into sections and make sure that you stick to top to bottom, left to right, because if you stick to top to bottom, left to right, there's less chance that you're going to forget stuff. Okay. And then after that, it's just practice, 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 and keep doing it. Okay. Hossein, you are most welcome for the live programs. I'm really glad that I can help people to pass the road test and be successful in getting their license and being better drivers and being crash free. So that's really my goal. Naruto, tips for not making wide turns. Naruto, definitely look at the fundamentals of driving. Work with those 36-inch tall, 1 meter tall pylons in the parking lot, doing the forward figure eights, the reverse figure eights, because what you're having trouble with, Naruto, is you're having trouble with space and place of the vehicle. And you need to sort of understand the blind areas around the vehicle, and you need to understand steering, and that will help you with that if you revisit that in the parking lot. The other thing is when you're making turns, oftentimes you make wide turns because your speed is too high. So if you're making right-hand turns, you need to sort of be 10 to 15 kilometers an hour, or sort of 8 to 12 miles an hour, or on left turns you need to be 15 to 25 kilometers an hour, or you need to be sort of 12 to 20 miles an hour. So know that you need to get your speed down before you actually execute the turn, so you're not as wide. There we go. Okay, Corey, thank you so much for that. Bernice, highway driving is my greatest fear, so I just drive to the city to get to anywhere. All right, Bernice, one of the things that I might suggest for you to sort of work on that anxiety and trepidation that you have with driving on highways is to try and drive on some of the highways that don't have as much traffic on them. So, you know, some of the back roads and highways and those types of things, and also the ones that don't have higher speed limits. You know, it's not 100 or 120 kilometers an hour or 65 or 70 miles an hour. Just drive on the ones that have 80 kilometers an hour, 50 miles an hour, and it's a fairly decent, not too traveled road, and just get used to that. And then that way you won't, you know, it'll help to reduce some of your anxiety and fear about driving on roadways. And, you know, just the more exposure you get, the better that's going to be for you. Okay. Okay, thanks Corey for putting that video up on the fundamentals of driving. So for those of you, I suggested that. Okay. All right, so Wilson, so you are, yeah, do try and contact them, Wilson, for sure. And they'll certainly, you know, once you talk to them and sort of remind them, hey, because unfortunately, you know, we're all busy and we get busy doing other things, especially driving schools and those types of things. So just definitely, you know, tap on the door and say, hey, I'm still here. I want to pass my road test. Okay. So Paul, just passed my road test this morning at the age of 57. Ever watching your videos. I've been an epileptic since 1975. Thank you very much. Paul, you are most welcome. And that is just an awesome story that you passed your road test. Congratulations. And I certainly hope that you are having a great celebration, because that is well deserved. That is an inspiring story that you passed your road test at 57, and you know, and you've been an epileptic. That is really an inspiring story. That's a great story. Thanks so much for sharing that. Okay. So we've got kind of a pause here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and do my presentation on vulnerable road users and talk to you a little bit about that. And then I'm going to come back and I'm just going to revisit the left-hand turn thing, because I said I was going to do that. So we'll just switch over to the PowerPoint presentation here. There we go. All right, so most of you know who I am. And I am Rick August, and I actually, yes, I do have a PhD in legal history. I call it traffic safety as well, because I looked at the history of road traffic in between sort of 1890 and 1930 as road speeds increased 500%. And essentially what happened, road speeds went from 6 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour, which is sort of saying today that in another 40 years, we'll all be driving around cities at 250 kilometers an hour. That's essentially what happened at the beginning of the 20th century with motorized vehicles. And I looked at that huge increase in road speeds and its impact on policing and law. So that's what my PhD is in. And one of the road user groups that vies for road space are vulnerable road users. And I was once a vulnerable road user. Well, I still am a vulnerable road user, but let me repeat that. Let me rephrase that. I was an arrogant vulnerable road user. I used to step out in front of traffic and say, oh, they'll stop. But then I became a driving instructor and became somewhat more informed about road users and traffic and how vulnerable you are as a pedestrian on the roadways. And then I became a bit more cautious and certainly try to teach my children to be more cautious. And speaking about my daughter, my children, my 8-year-old daughter, Scout, that's her name, we went out of the house the other morning to walk down to school, and she dislikes having her hair combed. She vehemently dislikes having her hair combed, and we went out of the house, and it was kind of a flashpoint, and I combed her hair because she wasn't going to do it, and she stormed off, and she's old enough to go across the road on her own, and she stormed off and went across the road. Well, the traffic from the left did in fact stop, but the traffic from the right didn't, and she stormed out, and she was about halfway across the first lane of traffic before I bellowed at her, telling her to get back, and she nearly got clipped because the vehicle coming from the other side didn't stop, in fact, even slow down, which kind of is a terrifying moment for most of us who are parents, as you may or may not know. So that's what happened. So who are vulnerable road users? Vulnerable road users on our roadways are pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, and people on scooters. As you can see in the picture there, the person on the scooter in traffic, and this is becoming more and more common. The road users that are vying for our road space are pedestrians, cyclists, people on motorcycles, light cars and trucks, buses, trucks, trolleys, trams. Now the other road user group are these people on scooters who have mobility challenges, and they can be a bit intimidating because they're small and they're actually out in the lane of traffic. So this is the new road user group that you need to look for. Traffic statistics tell us that 25% of fatalities on our roadways due to traffic crashes are these vulnerable road user groups. And you can see here in the image that most of these pedestrians are crossing the roadway against the traffic light. So you need to know that pedestrians aren't always going to cross the roadway at a crosswalk. They're not always going to cross at an intersection. Oftentimes they're going to cross outside of the crosswalk. They're going to cross lights and those types of things. So these are one of the groups of road users that you have to be looking out for when you're preparing for a road test and you're driving generally to continue to be a safe driver. And one of the reasons they call them vulnerable road users is because if they get in a traffic crash, they're most likely going to be killed or seriously injured. So that's why they're called the vulnerable road users. And one of the things that you need to do as a pedestrian is you need to develop a road sense that roads in fact are dangerous, cars are dangerous, and that they don't always stop for you. So one of the things we do with children is we teach them a road sense. We teach them at a very young age that traffic is dangerous, that they need to stop at intersections, they need to look both ways. And one of the things that I'll add about teaching children a road sense is that they have to look in both directions and they have to listen as well. And if you're crossing an intersection, make sure you look back behind you to the left in case there's a right turning vehicle as well. So we teach children a road sense. And the other thing about children is children have some limitations in terms of their biology in contrast to adults. For example, children only have about 160 degrees of peripheral vision, or 150 degrees rather, whereas adults have 180 degrees of peripheral vision. Children in motion tend to stay in motion. They don't stop, and they don't see cars as dangerous. And oftentimes if they see a car, they think that the car is going to stop because they can see it, even though maybe the driver can't see them. And then, so children have some limitations in terms of their biology, in terms of being in traffic and those types of things. So we teach them from a young age a traffic sense, and cars are dangerous. And some of the other programs in place in the 50s and 60s, the Ontario Safety League out of Ontario developed Elmer the Elephant. And Elmer the Elephant was the safety elephant. They had little songs that taught children how to cross roads safely and those types of things. So those are some of the ways that we did that in terms of keeping children safe. History. This is an article that I wrote called "Spinning Our Wheels: Inability of Traffic Policy to Change Driver Behavior." And one of the challenges for traffic experts and driving authorities to change driver behavior is that you're trying to change millions of people's behavior on any given day, in any given traffic situation, in any given mood. So it's a very daunting task to try and get drivers to change their behavior. And you can see that in terms of when the seatbelt laws came in the early 1970s. There was a huge, enormous pushback in terms of not wearing seatbelts. And it wasn't until 20 years later that we started to see high rates of seatbelt use, and that was because of a whole lot of different reasons. One of them was, seatbelt lights in the car that are annoying, and we need to put our seatbelt on. But the biggest one that I argue in this article is that it's the reverse impact, or the reverse influence of children growing up wearing seatbelts, and then they influence their parents and nag their parents to wear their seatbelts, and that's why we got a high use 20 years later. Uh, Pedestrians at the beginning of the 20th century up until the 1950s, after the Second World War, were really the ones that were being killed on our roadways because they needed to develop a traffic sense. You had to understand that it was the baby boomers in the 1960s and or 50s and 60s that were the first generation to grow up with the motor cars. So people in the beginning of the 20th century had to learn a traffic sense, very much in the way that we teach children a traffic sense in this day and age. And then at the last half of the 20th century, motor cars started running into each other. Single vehicle crashes due to drinking and driving. Drinking and driving was an enormous problem at the end of the 1960s and early 1970s. And this was one of the reasons that we had seatbelt laws in combination with anti-drink driving laws. And really an entire culture of drinking in North America and other countries changed because of the high fatalities. So the other vulnerable road user on our roadways is motorcycles. People who ride motorcycles are 35% more likely to be killed in a car crash than people driving a car. And many of the crashes happen at intersections. We know as traffic authorities that 40% of crashes happen at intersections. This is one of the reasons why left-hand turns, which I've been talking about this week in the videos, are such a high-risk maneuver. So left-hand turns. The other thing, that the reason that a lot of motorcycles are killed or injured or fatally hurt on traffic crashes is because of inexperience and youth. Motorcycles are very much associated with masculine traits of aggressiveness and immortality that people, young men just are not thinking that they're going to be killed. And insurance statistics show all of this. The other interesting thing in the last few years, young women have begun to come on board with high rates of crashes and collisions as well with men. So it's not just males anymore that are high risk of being involved in a traffic crash. It's also women as well. So where do drivers look for vulnerable road users? You need to observe, especially at night, because a lot of pedestrians are wearing dark clothing. They're not crossing at crosswalks or intersections. They're jaywalking and those types of things. And when you're making left-hand turns and pedestrians are crossing the roadway, please do not charge pedestrians. I find that incredibly irritating when I'm trying to cross a roadway. People are making a left-hand turn and they drive right up to you. Just really is annoying, and it's dangerous, and it really frightens pedestrians, and it really upsets me when people have done that, and I've had it done to me several times. So those are a bit of information about vulnerable road users. The one other point that I'll make about vulnerable road users, for those of you who are still feeling a bit arrogant as a pedestrian and stepping out in front of traffic and those types of things, just before I say that, I'll just say, if you're getting a road test this week, good luck on that, and then I'll just switch this back here. Okay, there we go. So, and I'll just look at the comments here. All right, so what I was going to say about vulnerable road users and being a pedestrian and stepping out into the roadway in front of traffic and those types of things, if you do get hit by a car and you're a pedestrian, and most of the time it's going to be a car, it's not going to be a pickup truck and those types of things. What happens is the front bumper of the car is usually high enough that it's going to hit you in the femur. And it usually shatters that bone. It usually shatters the femur bone. And unlike what's in the movies where people get hit by cars and they just roll up over the hood, it doesn't happen like that. The bumper is at the femur, and then essentially what happens is it knocks the legs out from underneath you, spins you up in the air, you do a couple of backflips, and your head usually comes down on the windshield. So you not only sustain severe damage to your lower extremities, but usually what kills you is the impact of your head going through the windshield of the vehicle. So know that if you're involved in a crash with a car and you're a pedestrian, very unlikely that you're going to survive. And traffic statistics really pan that out, because 25%, almost a quarter of road traffic fatalities are vulnerable road users. So pedestrians, cyclists, motorcycles, people on motorcycles, and scooters. So it is dangerous. All right, so let's get to some of the comments here. All right. Thanks, Paul. Okay, Sunday is a good day to venture out on the highway. Rush hour to work is the scariest. Yeah, rush hour, burners, is a daunting time because there's lots of traffic for sure. Yes, that great quote from Roosevelt. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. Indeed, that is very true. So, and the more exposure you get to it, the easier it's going to go, and the fear is going to start to abate. Anna, Yes, you are very right, Anna. Most drivers do not come to a full stop when they turn right on a red light. And you'll probably notice that at stop signs as well, that most drivers do not come to a complete stop at a stop sign. Michael, no, somebody wasn't running over my girl. She just sort of stomped out in front of traffic. The one lane of traffic did stop, and I got to her and yelled at her before she continued out across the roadway. So it was just a near miss in one of those, you know, the heart skips kind of moments. Okay. Yes, as we get older and as our bodies mature, we get a wider degree of peripheral vision. It actually goes out to about 180 degrees. In children, it's only about 150, so it's actually a narrower field of peripheral vision, and that's the way our vision works, is that we have a peripheral vision, and it's attracted to light and movement, and it's one of the things that keeps us safe, and that's why you only have to check 90 degrees, because there's another 90 degrees in your peripheral vision, and if there's something there, then what happens is that your peripheral vision is attracted to that light and movement, and then it draws in your central vision, which is about a quarter, is about this much at arm's length, is your focus of your central vision. So that's how that works. Cousin rode a motorcycle was one time cut off by a car turning right. Yes, sometimes. Yes, there are resistant road users, no doubt. Okay, little Monty, what advice do you have for someone that's going to the DMV to get their permit this week in California? Now, when you say your permit, is that your learner's permit that you're going in just to write the knowledge test? Is that what you're doing this week? Janka, you are most welcome. Mikey, hey man, it's easy to pass a driving test the very first time with no experience. Mikey, probably not. For some people, it's very difficult, and you have to know that passing a road test is very different from driving, because there are certain skills and abilities and techniques that they expect you to have in place for the purpose of passing a road test. I had a comment from a smart driver this week who failed the road test because they didn't stop for an emergency vehicle. And if you don't stop for an emergency vehicle on a road test, you have to know that those types of things are automatic fails. So I would suggest that you do a bit of work before you go in. Don't just go in without any experience, because it's not likely you're going to be successful. I'm not saying that you won't be successful, just saying that the possibility of you actually passing the road test is not very high. Okay, little Monsi, yes, my permit, my knowledge test. Yes, read the book, study. What I suggest to you is to go online here, look for some practice driving test questions. There are some practice driving test questions over at the Smart Drive Test website. Do those, because those will identify the gaps in your knowledge. Don't try and read the driver's manual from cover to cover, because I'll tell you, that just like will cure insomnia. So what you need to do is do the practice driving test questions, identify the gaps in your knowledge, go back to the driving manual, read the driving manual and those specific parts, and then go back and do the test questions again, and that will help you to do that. And as well, the tagline that I use at the end of my videos, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. So you need to pick the best answer. So make sure that you read the question thoroughly, pick out the keywords, read all 4 choices on the test question, and then pick the best one, not necessarily the right one. Because, for example, if you're at a 4-way stop, for example, and they ask you the question, who is the right of way to the 4-way stop? First vehicle to arrive, the vehicle on the right, the vehicle in the intersection, or the biggest vehicle, right? So what is the best answer of that? So there's 2 right answers, because the vehicle on the right and the first vehicle to arrive both have the right of way. That is a correct answer according to the manual. But the best answer is the vehicle in the intersection, because the vehicle in the intersection has the right of way. Because as I say again and again about right of way is always given, never taken. Okay, so know that for the purposes of your theory test. All right. Michael, is it possible to pull over to the right lane if it's the nearest lane? Yes, you can, Michael. Whichever lane or shoulder is the closest that you can pull over to, for the purposes of an emergency vehicle. You don't necessarily have to pull over to the left lane or the right lane. Just get out of the way of the emergency vehicle. And if you're at an intersection and an emergency vehicle appears for the purposes of your road test, you might have to drive through the intersection, or turn the intersection, or go through the roundabout, or wherever you might be at, to get out of the way and clear a path for the emergency vehicle. So know that as well. Andrew, for driving general on the highway, is there a way around checking blind spots? As the car's moving 100, it's scary to take your attention from the front to turn your head. Yeah, I know, Andrew, it is a bit scary because you're moving really quickly. And essentially what you need to do is you just need to turn your head more quickly, okay? Because you don't need to linger there when you've got your head 90 degrees. It's just a quick snap of the head, just quick head check to the left or right, whichever way you're going to be moving the vehicle, okay? Let's see. Express, hello. Express Solutions, hi there, how are you? Okay. And little Monsi, thank you so much for the subscription. We really appreciate that. That's really awesome. And I think I'm finally going to have to do a milestone video. We're coming up on 30,000, and I really appreciate that to all the people who have subscribed and have continued to be smart drivers and educate themselves about being better drivers and staying out of trouble. Wee, my road test is coming up in a few days. Sadly, it would be my third time completing it. The only difference about this road test is that there is snow. I'm currently having problems with snow, yes. Have a look at the video. There's pass your road test first time in the winter time. Have a look at that. That will help you out with driving in the snow and passing your road test. And I have little doubt that you're going to be successful because you're on my channel. And that's what we do here, is we help you to pass a road test, okay, and be successful. Busy Bee, obey speed limits, but drivers always pass me or give me dirty looks. I asked my driving instructor. He says sometimes people break the law on speed. What do you think about that? Yes, I totally agree with what your driving instructor said. Very few people drive the speed limit. They're always going to drive above the speed limit because there's tolerance for speed limits. So people are going to do that. So you just need to know that. All right. People rarely stop at stop signs, complete stops, and those types of things. There is a driving culture that we have here in North America. They have a driving culture in Australia. Any country in the world has a driving culture. And those driving cultures are going to allow certain laws to be broken, not stopping at stop signs, speeding, and those types of things. So know that you're just going to have to get comfortable with that driving culture and know that after you get, for the purpose of getting your license, it's a different set of requirements than for driving, okay? So after you get your license, have a look at top 10 tips for post-license driving to stay safe, and that'll help you out a little bit. Okay, Raina, hi there, how are you? Love the smiley faces. They're great. Okay, and Corey's got the video up there for those of you taking a road test in the winter time, how to pass driver's license road test first time. And as well, I noticed today that I was looking at that video because somebody was commenting that I was doing 40 in a school zone. And actually, I remember, excuse me, I did that video for Kyle Crasto, who was doing his road test almost a year ago now, in Toronto at that time in the winter time, and he requested that I do that video. So I did that video, and it was interesting because I went past a school sign, and I was doing the post-production on the video, and I saw that because there's speedometer, I have the speedometer up in a camera on that video, and I was doing 40 kilometers an hour. I'm like, oh great, now I gotta reshoot the video. And after doing some research and looking at Google Maps, which I just love Google Maps Street View, I noticed that it wasn't a school zone sign, but in fact it was a school in the area sign. So you don't have to slow to 30 kilometers an hour if it's just a school in the area. So check out the school zone signs, or school signs. I have a video on that as well, and it explains, because there are about 5 different school signs that indicate those goofy school signs, and some of them are school zone signs. Do 30 kilometers an hour when children are present on the highway, and there's a school in the area. So just take note of those signs and whatnot, okay? So there you go. Corey's got that up. Really great. Awesome. All right, so yeah, and I think we got all this. We'll see who else is here. Okay. Michael, you saw animals on the roadway. If it's a smaller animal, I generally recommend that you do not try to avoid smaller animals. If it's a bigger animal, then you're going to have to try and brake as hard as possible and reduce the impact by as much as possible. by getting the vehicle off at an angle. You don't want to try and hit the animal straight on, like if it's a cow or a moose or a deer or something like that, because oftentimes what happens is you'll sweep the legs out from underneath it, then the torso of the animal will come up and come through the windshield. So if it's a bigger animal, you want to try and get offline a little bit. That will help you out somewhat in terms of reducing the severity of the impact, okay? But if it's a smaller animal like a squirrel or a badger or something else, then you want to try to, you just want to run over it. Don't do any defensive moves, evasive action, and those types of things. All right, Ricardo. Instructors are now saying at a stoplight, to take a left turn, you have to stay at the line and not go up in the box when the light is on green. Is that now a general rule? Ricardo, that's probably somebody's opinion. It's somebody's professional opinion. I don't say to get into the intersection. When I say you're waiting for a left-hand turn, I tell you to just put the front steer tires on the front crosswalk line. And as I've said, that you're committed to the intersection, but you're not in the intersection if something happens. So that's what I recommend for drivers. Now, that might be something else specific to the licensing center where you're taking your license test, but it tends to be fairly universal that where you wait is up to different places and discretion of them and whatnot. Danielle, how can you get over the fear of failing the permit test? Do practice tests. Lots of practice tests on the internet. Find practice driving test questions on the internet. There's some over at the Smart Drive Test website. Go over there and do those. And those will help you to alleviate your anxiety and tension. And as well, don't try and read the manual cover to cover, because man, that thing will cure insomnia. They're terrible things to try and read. So just do the practice driving test questions, identify the gaps in your knowledge, and then go back to the manuals, find the specific information that you need to answer those questions, and then go in and take your test and just breathe. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer for the purposes of a theory test, okay? And then you just, unfortunately, you got to do it. I mean, and you know, one of the things that I used to do when I went to university and school and did tests and those types of things is you need to sort of play the game. What's the worst thing that's going to happen if you're unsuccessful? If you're unsuccessful, then you just go and do it again. It's not going to be, you know, it's not a blight on your reputation. You're going to be okay. So know that you're going to be okay. All right, and that you can do it. You're just going to go and write the test until you're successful, so you can do it. Rowan, thank you so much. I passed my G2 yesterday because of you. You are most welcome, and thank you for letting us know. That's really great. I'm glad that helped out. Thank you so much. That's just a really awesome compliment. Thank you so much. That really is appreciated. So again, if you like what you're seeing here and you like the videos on the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that like button, thumbs up button there, and all of that, and leave a comment by all means, and I'll answer your questions and whatnot. All of that helps out. And you know, if you can share the channel around with your friends and other people that might be getting a road test. One of the things with social media is that we're in the 6 degrees of separation. Actually, I think they're getting down to 5, maybe even 4 degrees of separation now. That you're always going to know somebody that's going to need some help. And you know, really, that's what we're trying to do here, is help people be successful passing a road test and be successful at being crash free and being good, safe, defensive drivers, so that they stay out of trouble. Because there's nothing more of a shock to the system than being involved in a traffic crash. And if it can help you to do that, to stay out of trouble, especially with the new crash analysis playlist and videos that I'm creating and putting up, we can learn from other people's mistakes, and we can put in place strategies and techniques that are going to keep us safe and keep us out of trouble. And that way, you know, you can learn from other people instead of making the mistakes yourself. Because we, you know, it says, Newton said, "I know what I know because I stood on the shoulders of giants," right? And sometimes it's not just shoulders of giants, but it's also, you know, we learn from other people's mistakes. Instead of making mistakes ourselves, we learn from other people and say, hey, I know how to fix that or how to change that and make it different. All right. Okay. So yeah, Corey showed me a video tonight that I'm going to do a video on. I'm going to do it for the crash analysis. I'm not going to do it right away because The disclaimer on the crash analysis video is that people do die in traffic crashes. And what I'm going to say about traffic crashes, one of the things that academics have said about traffic crashes, if you took all of the traffic crashes that occurred in your country and you put them in one place at one time, it would be deemed a national emergency, because so many people are killed in traffic crashes that it's mind-boggling to people who are who study this. I mean, in the United States of America, every 6 to 8 weeks, more people are killed in traffic crashes every 6 to 8 weeks than all the soldiers that were killed in the Vietnam War. So that just gives you some idea of how dangerous traffic crashes are. So one of the disclaimers I'm going to put in the crash analysis is that people do die in these traffic crashes. I mean, some of them you can't see it, some of them you can. So the video that Corey's talking about the flying brick incident is that some of the cargo fell off the back of a truck and flew up into a car, and the woman was killed. And I'm going to do a video about it and talk about load security and those types of things, and how important it is to make sure that you do a pre-trip inspection if you're hauling a trailer or you have a truck and you have freight or cargo on it, that you make sure that it's secure, that you didn't leave any tools or anything else on the deck or those types of things that can fly out, because it's going to cause damage and maybe even fatalities and injuries to other people on the roadway. So you need to do that. All right. So the disclaimer about some of these videos that I'm going to be showing in the crash analysis video is that they're going to be fairly graphic, and as I said, people are going to die and people are going to be injured and maimed and whatnot. So know that about traffic crashes, and as well know how dangerous traffic crashes are. I mean, most of us drive around we know that the average person on average has a traffic crash every 14 years. So most of us, we have an optimism bias, and we know that we're not going to be involved in a crash, but every once in a while it happens, and it happens quite a bit. And because of the short duration of traffic crashes, they're cleaned up so quickly, oftentimes we don't see them. Okay, so know that about traffic crashes. All right, Busy Bee, thank you so much for that. 2 weeks. Good luck on your road test, Busy Bee. You're going to do fine. Yes, mirror signal shoulder check. So make sure you check that center mirror first, and make sure that before you start slowing down and whatnot, that the traffic behind you is actually coming to a stop. And then shoulder check, check your wing mirror, and do that twice before you start moving the vehicle laterally. And make sure that you do that for every lateral move, or you do that anytime you're going to turn the vehicle. Just anytime you're going to move the vehicle sideways, that you're shoulder checking and having a look there. All right, Janka, have you any to beat high speeds? Okay, yes, Janka, moderate exposure. So sort of move yourself up as you drive in the city, get up to 50 kilometers an hour, and then move into multi-lane roads where there's more traffic and those types of things. So just ease yourself into this as you move up and up. And when you actually get up on roads that have 80 kilometers an hour, 50 miles an hour, go onto a low density road where you can do that and you can practice, and that will help with your tension and anxiety and just help to reduce it. Is just give yourself exposure bit and those types of things as well. Janka, make sure that you give yourself credit for what you've done. Celebrate your little successes, because it is a big deal. If you've got fear and anxiety around that, when you're able to do that and you're driving on a 70 kilometer an hour road or a 40 mile an hour road, and you're able to do that for 5 to 10 minutes, that's a big success. So make sure that you congratulate yourself, and maybe take yourself out for some ice cream or something like that, and say, yeah, I can do this. And just keep that in your head as well. The four most powerful words in the English language: I can do this. Okay, so when things get tough or you're feeling scared or upset, just repeat that to yourself. So that's how you do that. Ashimer, why do drivers cut people off? I don't think I can answer that question for you definitively with any answer, but unfortunately, one of the things you need to know about driving is that it's not a matter of people are going to cut you off. It's a matter of when people are going to cut you off. Know that it's going to happen, and I know it's frustrating, I know it's upsetting, but just take a breath and say to yourself, have a nice day, go and have your crash somewhere else. Okay, just try not to get upset by it, and know that it's going to happen. If you know that it's going to happen, then when it does happen, probably not going to be so amazed or upset about it. All right. Okay, Michael, saw another car run a red light on the way to an appointment. Yeah, unfortunately, you're going to see that a lot. Okay, so yeah. All right. Yes, Michael, do multi-car collisions on freeways because those are quite deadly, and unfortunately it's very daunting, especially when you see them on video and the cars are just coming in really high speeds and not slowing down. Yeah, there's definitely, Michael, there's no shortage of traffic crashes, that's for sure. All right, we're getting up to the... Okay, Anna. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up there. Okay, lots of questions, lots of great information and feedback and those types of things. So if you have any further comments or further questions, I'll definitely catch up to you in the comments as well. You can leave me an email at rick@smartdrivetest.com. I'll be more than happy to get back to you and talk to you about anything to do with driving, passing a road test, defensive driving, and those types of things. So know all of that. Okay. And be more than happy to help you out to pass a road test and be successful doing that. So I want to thank Corey for getting up the videos, Bricks for Wheels, for the other people that I mentioned in terms of those people asking questions in the videos that are there and provide information for you to be successful on your road test. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate all your questions and answers, and really appreciate your feedback. And for those people telling me that they passed a road test in the last couple of weeks, thank you so much for that. It was really great, and I appreciate your time. And remember, good luck. And if you're taking a road test this week, good luck on your road test. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.